Welcome to the Movement Podcast. This show is all about movement, giving you a better idea of how you can optimize the human body to be the best it can be.
All right, so great. We got Mike Deibler here. Really excited to talk about some program design, which, you know, one of the things that Gray and Mike, when I asked some of the places that have asked me to come and present and some of the topics that they asked me about and I really asked them about. And one of the topics that always gets brought up from the attendees about what they want presenters to talk about, and that's program design.
Yep.
And, you know, I always have felt that's one of the most difficult things we as professionals can do, because as much as the textbooks, as much as the academics try to say this is what you need to do, there is no cookie cutter approach to designing a program. And we're very fortunate to have one of the experts, one of the FMS experts as well, one of our instructors come in and help us with this topic. So Mike, I'll turn it over to you. Just give us a little background, give us a little bit more information about you and your journey and what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. Well, as always, thank you so much. I'm excited to be back on here. It's always great talking shop with you guys, and I hope to provide some insight to the listeners, and I'm always going to pick up some things anytime I talk to you guys. So I, along with instructing with FMS, my wife and I own a personal training studio in Carlsbad, California. We've been doing it for about 15 years now. So it's been quite a while, quite a journey. And in terms of program design, it's come a long way from when I first started and thinking about how the first programs that I first wrote. I'll say how bad they were. You know, you really just do what you learned. And back then it was a lot of bodybuilding, right? That's kind of what you did. And then you start to really get your education when you're in front of people. So I'm still with clients. I work with clients, you know, most days of the week, and learning every day that, like you said, there's no cookie cutter approach to this, because everyone is so unique. They move so differently. They learn so differently, and they have different goals. And so I work with a wide variety of clientele, from older population who are trying to be independent, play with their grandkids, just live at home and be able to do what they want, to athletes. Last time we talked, I do a lot with OCR athletes and other traditional sports, and trying to perform at their highest. So I have to see a pretty big range, and there's a lot of science, but a lot of art, and really understanding how do I create the best program in the time that I have to create a realistic plan that's going to help this individual in front of me. So it's a journey, and I'm always learning, and think we do some things right, and it really helps our clients get to where they're trying to get to.
I'm actually humbled by the fact of writing a program from scratch and filling every, functional minute of the training floor, and then making those recommendations of what they do in rest and recovery. Because I'll be honest with you, being a strength coach and a PT, I'm up in a lot of people's programs, but I never write their original program. I come in and get to be the editor. I get to say, yeah, we got to stop doing that, and that. And I've done it at NFL franchises, and I've done it for individuals where I see the program they're on. So I don't have to create motivation or dedication to that. They're already dedicated to, we're doing this thing. And I'm like, yeah, I got to pull you off squats because of the way you're squatting. But I fill that with this. And so I'm moving stuff around the chessboard, but I never set the table the first time, because coming out of rehab, I'm more concerned with them being cautious about this. There's so many different ways to program it. I'd almost just rather somebody else do it. But, coming out of school, frequency, intensity, duration. That's all we were taught to worry about. Early in your career, you embrace, all right, I'm going to take this movement sample too. So I got this metabolic load I got to do. Now I'm going to take a movement sample. Since the movement screen got added to your life, you probably got a lot of clients with wearables. So now we've got tracking information, we've got a movement profile, and we've got fitness, metabolic, and programming goals. And blending in wearables, movement screens, and the true program together. Lee and I just spent a weekend. That still locks up people because they don't know where the priority is. The priority was originally the program, because that's all there was. Right now, If your wearable doesn't like the way you're treating your body, there's hardly anything we can do in the program to change that. And if your wearable's good, but you can't move, there's a lot of limitations in your program. So people have these, the ones that are trying to be hyper vigilant. We got all these movement rules. Now we got all this stuff that's happening in their lifestyle that I wasn't aware about. How do I program around that? Well, I think it's better to know than not know. It's a little, it's a little harder sometimes to do those moving parts, but I honestly think that the way people like yourself do what you do is because you prioritize. You have to. You've got to always give up something that you would otherwise do because something just more important got thrown up on the dashboard.
Yeah, and I like the analogy of like course correction, right? If you're flying a rocket ship, right? And it's out in space and it starts to drift and we know the end destination we're trying to get to, but it's not a straight shot. We got to push a little bit this way. We start to drift. We got to move back and forth this way. And we have a lot of information that helps us understand if our clients or ourselves are starting to drift a little bit and we need to get back on path. And it's tough because we can get a little paralysis by analysis where we're just seeing so much information with so much data. But like you said, I think if you create a system where you start to prioritize a few things that make the most sense, right? So if like you said, if it's somebody and they're doing some tracking some sleep, right? Some basic vital signs, things like that. So for example, I'm working with a client right now who I've been with for years. She's got some stuff going on in her life right now, and it's a big stress. It's all over the place, and went to the doctor, blood work, personal things. To look at some vital signs, her blood pressure is through the roof. Her heart rate is very elevated. We're tracking this every day now. It's not just about her workouts. It's about, hey, you wake up in the morning, can we just look at your resting heart rate? It's 80 on a regular basis. This is pretty high right out of bed. Your blood pressure is very high. This is now our priority, is what are the things we can do to help manage this? And sometimes it is, like you mentioned, hey, I need to take this squat out. I need to edit. I have you, maybe we were doing interval training. Maybe we were doing some high intensity work. I don't think this is best suited for you right now, right? Hopefully we can get back to that. But where you are with the things going on, a lot of it is outside of my control, but at least I'm going to focus on the things I can control. Can we talk about sleep? Can we talk about the things you're eating? Can we talk about, if you are going to exercise, let's spend some time with some low intensity stuff, right? The things that I think are going to be most effective for helping control your blood pressure a little bit, helping get that heart rate down, breath work, all these things that I know this is what isn't what we first talked about when she came in, but because of the circumstances, we have to adjust, right? I had the plan. I thought it was a really good program, but now all the life throws curveballs. And that's what program design is understanding what are the lifestyle things that are affecting the client, understanding, is it in my control? Is it outside of my control? And then can I help you manage anything from my perspective?
Well,
and,
Mike, I'm sorry to interrupt right there. Yeah, Mike,
yeah.
One thing that I like how you framed that up. And I think one of the messages that we've tried to instill upon people at FMS that I still think creates some confusion is, we want people to create a system. So you've got program, system, and then you got the other term we threw out a lot is standardize kind of what you do. And to a degree, those all seem a little bit different. So kind of frame that up, because I think you just did, but I'm trying to throw that back at you a little bit, because I really like the way you talked about that. But, we're trying to create programs. We want you to take a systematic approach, but then we throw in there, hey, there should be somewhat of a standard protocol when someone comes in as an intake. So kind of give us those, kind of describe in your own words, those three things and how they all fit together.
Yeah. Maybe if we look at the big picture first, right? So I have a client in front of me. They have specific goals. Maybe trying to improve body composition, performance, whatever it might be. We watch them move. We have a pretty good idea of the plan that will get there. So we start with this big picture where this is what I think it would take for you to get there. But now I don't know your unique situation, right? So we go through an FMS. We go through an intake evaluation where I want to learn a little bit more about your sleep. again, just the big things that I think will have the most impact on your results by me just throwing more load, more stress at you. Can you handle that yet, or maybe not? So having really every time they come in, or at least if starting with initially, let's get your starting point. But I think we have an ongoing process, and that's the system, right? Because every time you come in, it might be a totally different day, right? Were you out partying the night before and you got a couple hours sleep, and I had this workout planned? Do I need to adjust? Or you got a great night's sleep, you feel awesome, motivated. So having those regular check-ins, I think, is important, and it can be as simple as, hey, on a scale of 1 today, 1 to 10, how ready are you to hit this workout today? Or it could be a little bit more advanced with some of our wearables and tracking, looking at HRV and heart rate, blood pressure. Using one thing I discovered, something called a short stress and recovery scale. It's an 8-question questionnaire. Was looking at some lifestyle and you looking at your body a little bit. How sore do you feel? How motivated do you feel? How anxious do you feel? How stressed are you right now? Just giving me a good idea. It should take you about 30 seconds to go through this, so we have an idea of is today a good day to keep going, or did some stuff come up to throw us a curveball and adjust? So just keeping that in mind, that we'll have our initial intake, just like a movement screen, right? You start in, that doesn't mean that movement screen will be identical down the road. I hope it gets better, but what if all these other things came into play and it's not, right? So we're regularly checking these types of things.
All right, let's take a quick break here to tell you about Symmio. Symmio is our holistic wellness platform designed to give you the tools and resources to assess, manage, and improve your clients' and patients' overall health and wellness. Go to Symmio.com to sign up for a free trial today. That's SYMMIO.com.
We got 2 new courses I think you'll like. One's a deep dive on mobility and one's a deep dive on stability. We really unpack that and show you how simple single corrective exercises aren't nearly as good as a meal of mobility assembled in a flow, in a set of stations. Do the same thing for stability. It's sort of a new way of looking at things, but it's that same old functional approach, just with nice packages that actually give you huge dividends.
And now let's pick up where we left off.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because doing what we've done with screens, pre-screens, even some of the stuff we're doing with our app right now that sort of surveys your wellness before we go deep on your movement. A person's own appraisal of their, I think, current state of readiness or state of recovery gets a vote. That actually shows up as a risk factor. Here's where it's a slippery slope. Most people, not all people, some people are really out of touch with themselves, and that's obvious a lot of different ways, not just through a question. But most people, if they don't feel fully recovered, or they feel that I'm not ready, they're usually right. It's where they try to decide why, where they usually get it wrong, because they're working through a much more narrow paradigm of the physical experience than we are. And when I've got to stay on top of somebody, we're rehabbing them in a 3-week period, or we're trying to get somebody ready. That subjective appraisal is important, but I never completely trust it. If I've got some state of readiness, like an HRV that they've been tracking, and then I think our quickest down and dirty test for movement is a motor control screen. It's that simple single leg stance, and I'm doing it for a central nervous system baseline departure more than I am checking their balance because I'm going to do a balance corrective today. So I've got sort of this triangle of experience. I've got your feelings right in there. And then I've got the HRV, which if collected correctly, there's no placebo effect. That is a scientific bedrock piece of it's directly related to your readiness. Other things can take you out. But if your readiness is only this good, you can't be much better than that today. This isn't a PR day. And then having that snapshot of motor control, if all 3 are lining up, it's obvious. But if they disagree, state of readiness is good, but musculoskeletal balance is bad. This may be more of a tissue day than a metabolic day or something like that. So I use it. But I'm glad you brought up, because we should listen to how they feel. We shouldn't listen to the reason why they think that. They're feeling good or bad is enough. We've got to help them define why. If they knew why, they wouldn't be feeling that way.
Yeah, and I think that's something it took me a while to figure out, but it's really important, especially with things. HRV is becoming more and more popular, and I think sometimes people kind of live and die by that number that they get. It's one piece, like you said, that we can get some good information from. But I think as simple as asking somebody how you feel, and then are those two numbers or perceptions matching up, we're on the right track. And if they're not, now maybe we dig a little bit deeper, right? Now maybe we do some more testing as we're starting their workout, looking at a few things, and like a motor control, maybe power production, looking at something as simple as a jump and seeing it's not quite there where you normally are. These are just signs that, okay, on the fly, we have to start adjusting what we're having planned for that day.
That makes me want to go back around to your client that was going through some, I guess we could call it now chronic stress, because if it's gone on more than 3 or 4 weeks, it's a continuous stressor. We know what happens to cortisol and sleep, right? They both get broken. You wind up in this cortisol bath all day. You wind up sleeping shallow, light, and not fully the night before. It's a compounding effect. The body can't get all the repair done during the evening, so the metabolism amps up with heart rate and blood pressure simply to meet the circulation minimums that we're not fully resetting at night. Exercise is the best way to get them to dump tension and rest, but it's also the best way to screw that up even more. And in many times, I've defaulted back to some form of carry. And I was reflecting on that as you were telling me about that client when we were teaching FCS out at your facility. I remember doing the 6-position carry out back, and really that 10-minute gauntlet we go through is really there to show you the first 5 minutes is actually harder than the second 5 minutes, because the first 5 minutes, you're bringing your tension and this burden that I've asked you to carry. We notice the same thing in rucking populations that will stop and do a stretch break and completely refresh their posture. If you have the independence and awareness to adjust accordingly and let go of some tension, the burden gets easier. So I hate to say it, it gets a little metaphysical there, but learning to deal with a carry burden, whether you're rucking it or vesting it or doing a 6-position carry, if we extend that out beyond the point they want to carry it, they'll get on the other side of that thing and realize I'm dumping tension and it's getting easier to stand up straight, breathe, not wobble when I walk, switch the load. So it's a task management drill, but by stretching it out for 10 minutes, you meet a little bit of the goal of exercise that day, but you do feel generally tired afterward. And I find out that when I've got people that I can't push them today, but I go ahead and force them to carry out of their comfort zone, here comes the rest. Here comes this general body dump fatigue. But I think the first point is I try to keep somebody under load enough so that before they get to fatigue, I give them a lot of fatigue management, breathing, dump the tension, change position, tall kneel to half kneeling turns, whatever I can under those loads. I try to do that. And it takes about a 3 or 4 day cycle, but we start seeing better rest and better tension management. And that tension is part of the aggregate that's the hypertension. So.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up that breathing, right? Like setting the stage, because I think that's the key. And sometimes people tend to skip over that aspect of it, where you don't have to spend the whole session doing a breathing exercise, but to set the stage and getting them to understand, well, this is what a good breath feels like, right? Let's at least spend a minute or two and understand, can you feel where that breath's coming from? Can you feel that tension going away? Now, once we move on, maybe we do a carry or maybe we're doing some mobility drills or different positions and postures. How well do they carry that over, right? And I think that's the key to managing stress, right? We just showed you this is what a good breath is like. Now I just gave you a little bit of load or a challenge, put you in a position maybe you're not super comfortable in. Did you keep that breath, or all of a sudden now it's a shallow, now it's that chest breath or short breathing, whatever it might be. When they make that connection where now it's, hey, I can manage the stress a little better. I think it goes a long way. Well, now I can carry that load a little bit better because I feel when I'm losing that, now I know how to bring it back. And that's our job, right? Is to teach them, not just to me stand next to you and tell you when to do all this stuff. It's when you feel it going wrong. And now you're able to bring it back and manage that stress. And I just think breath is one of the simplest tools, but one of the most effective ones that we can teach and show our clients to use.
I watched half a class this weekend who were all movement professionals get sort of re-enlightened. Lee had everybody just doing crocodile breath, just simply using the floor and feeling how many different areas you can breathe into. I saw that same group of people a half hour later. I'm teaching tall kneel and turns. I think sometimes they think the crocodile breath, that breathing awareness moment that we give you, whatever drill we use, I think they think that's a reset, and then all breathing is going to be good after that. And it's almost like those cues that they get, we've got, just like you said, we've got to bring that breathing awareness into the next thing, because if I'm doing tall kneeling turns or I'm doing box jumps, there's a different breath signature there. But there's also a recovery breath between, and so I think doing a breath corrective is becoming very vogue now. Everybody's got a little exercise that's going to help you breathe better. But if we're not also there to match an appropriate breath, and one of the things we're doing right now is like when you're doing a turn, I can justify both an inhale or an exhale helps you turn. If you need integrity and a little bit of stability, usually the inhale makes the movement better. If you're carrying too much tension into that direction, an exhale makes it better. Both are correct, but I don't know which one's going to work for you. But taking the breath lesson, crocodile breath, into a movement drill, into an activity is the progression of breath awareness. It's not just reset your breathing. And I think half the room got it, and half the room still thought the crocodile breath was good breath medicine. I'm going to breathe better the rest of the day. And you might if you don't stress it. But the minute you stress it, what do? You default back to the shallow breath. Well, that's exactly what the exercise is. If we're in a corrective, we're stressing you in a direction that you don't own yet. And if you're pushing yourself into conditioning, you're going to be tapping into some metabolic reserves that you don't often touch. So,
yeah, and I think obviously breathing is one of those topics that people have very strong beliefs and opinions, and obviously it's important. But I think I know we're talking about programming, so I'm hopefully not going too off topic here. But I think breathing is something that should be programmed in to any exercise. Like you said, there's different styles of breathing. If I'm going to have you get under a heavy bar or deadlift a max load, there's a very specific breath you should use that's going to keep you safe and stable. But assuming you're doing sub-maximal loading, I know that the kind of old exhale on exertion is the breathing thing that most of us probably learned back in the day, and that was it. That was just what you did to lift weights, and I think that kind of stuck. And then if you bring up the idea, well, now I want you to inhale during this certain movement. Flip your breathing around. And if we think about everyday life, you're going to just be breathing, right? And you should be able to breathe in all sorts of positions, inhale, exhale, whatever the movement might be. And I think that's critical for understanding when I'm designing a program is what kind of breathing cues should I give this person, because maybe they're just stuck, and because they aren't even thinking about breathing at all. Just make them aware, like flip it a little bit, make them think about something different. And now they're thinking about their breath while they do a plank, a lunge, a squat, whatever it might be, assuming it's submaximal. Why can't we switch these things around and program that in there?
Well, Mike, I think what you're, some of the things you want, let's just use breathing as the example here, kind of get back to the whole idea of program design. I imagine a lot of what you're doing as part of your system, as part of your programming, is a little bit different than maybe what people have gone through in the past, or certainly maybe not what they're expecting. So how do you approach some of those, I'll use the word skeptics? How do you explain to them? Because one thing Gray mentioned, and one thing that I'm kind of getting you to push you in that direction, create that awareness for some of those people, why these things are important. One of the most common questions that I've gotten over the years, and I know Gray's gotten the same question, I want to know how you respond, is how do you explain to your clients that these things that they don't think are probably important, how important they are, whether it's movement, whether it's breathing. They're coming in to lose 20 pounds and you got them stepping over a string.
Yeah, of course. I think we need to be salesmen, right? Of course, they came in for a specific goal, and I always have to keep that in mind. Their goal was not to learn how to breathe better, most likely, right? They maybe want to lose some body fat, they want to jump higher, whatever it might be. So I always am doing the best I can to relate whatever we're doing to that goal, right? So if I'm dealing with a runner and you're stepping over a string, and can we see how are you aware that you're having difficulty? Forget scoring. Do you feel like that was an easy task for you, or was it challenging? Every step you take when you're running, you're just going from one leg to the other. And if you're having a hard time simply stepping, obviously I think we can make some improvements that are going to improve some efficiency there. So any way I can find something that maybe I have an opportunity to help them, just relating that specific thing back to it. So whether it's breathing, a piece of the movement screen, always trying to keep that in mind is what's your end result and how do I think this one thing or two things or whatever it might be can get you to that. So it is an art to this, like I mentioned, of it's not just about writing the program, it's making them actually do the things, because I know it's not just about you seeing me a couple hours a week, it's about you doing this on your own. That's part of the program too, is I need a little bit of homework, right? And I'm not saying I need you to do an hour every day of something, but if I can at least find the one thing that I think you would benefit from spending a few minutes a day doing, then let's see how this improves whatever we were measuring, whether it's movement screen, heart rate, body fat.
Let me ask you this. When you assign homework, what are your top 3 things? Say early in programming, when you're sort of getting somebody started, whether they're high end or low end, they're part of the Deibler machine now. What are some of your top 3 take homes that you need people to do between sessions with you, simply to maintain the maximal value of your coaching? Because I either got to go home and help you do your homework and charge you for that too, or expect that I put you right somewhere that you can execute it, you have value in it, you know it needs to be done, and I'll also know if you're not doing it, right? If it's that important for you to do at home, I'll know if you're not doing it. What are your top 3?
Well, I'll say right off the bat, in terms of things I need you to understand, if that's what you're asking, is I need you to know what the difference between a right rep and a wrong rep is, or a right position or a wrong position, right? Where I can get you to do it when we're together. And you might say, I get it, I feel it, but asking them, can you go back to how you used to do it? Like, can you show me what a wrong rep is? And then can you fix it now? And can you do a right rep? And I think regardless of what I'm asking you to do, I think that's an important first step, is you're just aware of, it might be hard, maybe you can't do it for very long, but you understand that if I'm asking you to do this stretch, I want you to do it home when you're watching TV, you know you to be in this position and you feel what that position's like, and you can get that in and out.
Show me the wrong way.
So
yeah, I like that a lot. That's brilliant. Yeah.
So just making sure they're aware of good versus bad, right? If I know you can do that, then I feel confident that when you go home, you're going to be able to do something like that. Not everybody can get that right away. So kind of the next thing I would say is, can I be creative enough to find a way that you kind of can't do it wrong? Or I guess it's still awareness, right? Where now you're at least aware, even if you're not there where you perceive this is good or bad, but this is well, if I do this, it's wrong. So I'm just trying to think of an example quickly. Like, let's say you have a hard time, if we're like, every time you try and do a bear crawl, and we just see a lot of side to side pelvic movement, right? You haven't gotten that idea of control, and you just want to be sloppy all over the place. Well, what if we just had you next to a wall, and every time you lift that arm up, do you touch the wall? Do you have to shift your weight to do it, right? Just giving you some type of feedback there to make sure you understand, again, well, I did that wrong because I touched the wall, or whatever it might be. So trying to set it up, again, I guess kind of a little build off of that first thing is making sure you're aware. if it's right or wrong, even if you can't quite feel it yet.
Okay.
And let's see, third thing, I'm going to go back to just making sure you understand the big picture of why are we doing this in the first place, and how is this going to help you get to whatever your goal might be, right? Maybe you want to do these hard workouts, and I can't do that until you show me these basic things. But just getting them to buy in a little bit that, hey, if you do these, and if you just do that this week, every day, a few times, and I promise we're going to see some kind of improvement here. And now we can go to the next step. So kind of showing them, here's where we are right now. I just need you to earn this, and then we can move on. We're not going to do this forever, but just getting that buy-in on why are we doing this? It's not just some weird thing I want you to do.
I'm glad you went there, because you put structure around it. I was actually going for the past 15 years, my number one take home has been something like the toe touch progression. And the reason I picked that is they don't have to get on the floor, and it's pretty hard to screw up, right? Even if I don't give you the foam roll between your knees, but they know when they go to it each day, whether they can touch their toes or not, because they already couldn't touch their toes. We made that gain. They can touch their toes, but by them revisiting that, it lets me know how plastic they are or how much they fall back. And the toe touch progression just wound up being one of those great examples. The one that I would send home with most athletes in the early days was that single leg hip lift, right? Making sure that you got hip extension, but you can also hold flexion on the other side. And those two, as those exercises get easier, I usually get what I want back out of movement. That's why a piece of the toe touch progression is baked into every one of those little flows we do, because I know I can't cover all the bases today, but if I can get you just sort of to flow a few of those moves together, it's playful enough where if you don't have the precision that I want in a half kneeling chop or a single leg deadlift, I'm not going to lose anything, because I got that half foam roll for balance and consistency. So, even if they don't do that at high precision, going through those different stations are somewhat self-limiting, like a toe touch progression is. So I try to get something that they've got no excuse or reason not to do. But there also brings on some awareness, because I get feedback like, toe touch was really easy in the morning, but it's really hard at the end of the day. It takes twice as long to get my toe touch at the end of the day. So I start thinking about some of the postures and patterns they're doing the day. If they tell me at the end of the day, toe touch is good, but first thing in the morning, it takes me a while, I start thinking about what's their sleep hygiene, how are they sleeping, or something like that. So having that same routine, and I know coming from fitness, it gets boring if I got to do the same thing every day. Well, you take the same vitamin every day, right? You drink out of the same juice glass every day. So we're going to stay bored with you giving me a full week of your toe touch behavior. That lets me know how quick your brain and body are sort of recalibrating, and getting your tension in the right places at the right time, and not all up in your shoulders or down in your hamstrings or something like that.
Yeah. And what an easy exercise too. I like that you brought that up, where it's, if you're getting better, like pretty simple to see. Like I touched my toes today. I didn't, I got it in a few attempts. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause they don't know if they're getting better with chops and lifts. They don't. And you really can't see your range of motion when you do a single leg deadlift. So I try to not be a movement geek and really give people something simple. Like if you put your heels on that foam roll, what's your squat feel like today? Or something like that. So I try to give them these calibrations. So those flows, even though we put them up on YouTube as correctives, that's their personal movement screen until they ace it, until they can just by memory smooth through both sides, piece of cake. You don't own those movements, but if you can move through those flow, whatever reason we were at that flow for your movement screen, it's gone, right? Ankle mobility, hip mobility, T-spine, wherever we had you doing that, as soon as you've got it memorized and smooth, the problem on your movement screen is gone.
Yeah. And the cool part, I've definitely had this happen where a client who did it, right? They worked on something like a toe touch. They walk in that day and they say, hey, check this out. And they just reach and touch their toes. And it's like, that's awesome. We're ready for the next thing. And now you just unlocked more in our program database, right? Where now we can do some more fun stuff. that you just earned the right to be here. And that's getting even more buy-in. It's like, cool, what's next? Like, now work on this, you know?
The whole point of doing a movement screen is so you can hand them a toe touch and show them how much of that they can change right away. So we went through those growing pains this weekend, teaching together for the first time live, probably since the pandemic, me and Lee together. And these people have invested all this time learning the movement screen. They feel like they have to explain that to the client they're doing it to. And I'm like, it's as simple as this for me. I'm going to run you through the same battery of tests I run everybody through. Old, young, broken, not broken. I'm going to do as many of these tests on you as I can. There's no good or bad, but they will tell me exactly what your body needs and right where it needs it. And so we come out of the movement screen, we play with the toe touch, or we do something in bird dog, or we do some rolling, wherever it took me. It's like, your movements took me right here. And let me know what you're feeling. Oh, I can't even roll to that side, but this side's easy. That's exactly what the signature of your movement said. Now let's start grinding away at this. Or I knew I was always tight in the back of my. So I never make them learn anything about that one thing they want to articulate off that. And so most clients and athletes don't need the explanation that we require to add it into our programming. So you need that explanation if you're going to add it in, and you need to know all those things. You do not have to regurgitate that for Martha, right? Mm-hmm. She wants to lose 20 pounds, and you convinced her that if she can touch her toes, more of her muscles will be available to burn calories than if she can't. Okay, I'm going to touch my toes, and we're going to lose 20 pounds together. That's the end of the conversation. And it may not seem like a sales pitch, but you had to collect a lot of data to get to the toe touch progression first stop. Anybody can get to any exercise if you do enough of them, but you went right from screen to ability that she couldn't cover, gave her a few breathing segments. Now she's covering it. You actually showed her your movement is way more plastic than you once thought.
And Mike, I think what Gray's talking about is that's not the normal way of thinking, right? That's not what a strength conditioning fitness professional's trying to relay to their client, right? So my question to you is, your evolution to where you are now, what was some of the major milestones that you kind of uncovered? And whether it's movement screening or not, whatever it is, from where you were working day one, Mike Deibler, designing workouts, like thinking you were doing the right thing, to where you are now. Right. What was that evolution? And what were some of those things you had to kind of work through, or some of those things that were enlightening that, honestly, if you had to go back, you wish you knew then what you know now?
Yeah. Well, I think in the beginning, it was a lot of forcing people to do things where I had the mentality of, hey, everybody needs to squat. Everybody needs to deadlift. You need to do the human body is capable of these things. And you need to do it, and I'm going to force you to do it. And I think we know how that turns out when all of a sudden I'm throwing a kettlebell in your hand and you're squatting with it or deadlifting. And I'm thinking I'm a good enough coach to cue you into a good position. And then all of a sudden now I'm frustrated because I keep saying the same thing over and over again, and your back's still rounded. And, that's not what a squat's supposed to look like. I just showed you a good one. Why aren't you doing what I'm doing? I've gone down that road, and it's like their knees hurt, their backs hurt. And I just thought it's them, and just trying to keep passing the blame, like they're just not getting what I'm teaching, to then start, putting the focus on me. Like, okay, well, is it a cue thing, right? Was I just not giving good cues? Maybe, right? Maybe I found some things, some external cues that I can get them in. They understand what I'm asking them. But a lot of times they're getting frustrated because they either don't have any idea what I'm saying, or their body is not ready to go into that position. So to be able to let go, I think, was a big milestone for me to understand, like we teach with FMS, is right now, this isn't the best position for you to be in. I want to get there, but I know me forcing you to this position right now without kind of hitting some prerequisites first is not the way to go. And I know if we take the appropriate steps, right, using something like any kind of evaluation or screen that at least tells me to look at something that is contributing to this problem, if I can start to clear that up and then eventually bring back some movement, now I can get you deadlifting, and maybe you want to deadlift more, but your back keeps getting thrown out or hurt or whatever it might be. Having a better plan to get to that point versus let's just go right to the finish line. I think that's hopefully I'm not alone with that, but that's kind of where I started, where it was like, let's just get you there, and I'm going to start you at a lighter weight and get you a heavier weight. And that progression it only works assuming the person has, okay, movement and can get into these positions. But once I realized that in my own training, I think first, right, where I'm like, my back hurts, my knees hurt, I beat myself up a lot, and I just thought I need to push a little harder and I'll get over that hill. And I just ran into that wall too many times and finally realized, hey, there's definitely a better way. Let me look at a few other things, and whether it's a screen, whether it is lifestyle things, that was probably the next step, where I assumed it was all in the gym, right? It was all stretching, lifting, getting strong, and then realizing, hey, if you have a rough day at work, your workout's a little different that afternoon. If you're not sleeping, you're going to pay for it maybe the next couple of days, and at least start bringing up those conversations, right? These are hard things to address. I'm not saying, hey, I just tell you to go sleep and it fixes everything, but at least I'm having those conversations now, which I don't think I ever really did. It was like, get your 8 hours and you'll be good.
You guys do something in your facility that I think is going to be something more commonly done in the future. We know a lot of CrossFit boxes have an on-site PT or chiropractor, maybe athletic trainer. We know a lot of PT gyms have a wellness room right next door. You have access to get a medical movement screen done with Michelle Desser right next door. And I know that everybody with a problem, you don't send to her. And so give us the 3 different scenarios where you screen them, you're not even concerned about anything, they don't have a significant past medical history, you hit the ground running. Then you got these people that, you know what, I'm not sending you Michelle right away because this might not be here 2 weeks from now. But if it is, I'd like her to give me a second opinion on that. And then you got these people where I already know which way I'm going to take it. I'd like to see if there's anything else I'm missing, and you send it over there. So you've got those, 3 different clients. And more often than not, I would say most clients have one ache or pain that somebody should probably look at. But I also think if they're training with somebody like you guys can decide when you need that looked at, because a month from now, it could be a non-issue. And with a prudent approach that you're taking, wearables, good intake, movement screen to check the wheels first, and then responsible loads, we're not going to miss anything. So, having that ability, because a lot of people don't have that referral relationship, but they're still going to have that distribution of patients. You're still going to have people that are going to do better getting one other thing checked before they work with you, or at least if this doesn't clear up in a little while, I got to go there. And a lot of people don't have that option, so they just assume they don't need it. And you need that option, whether it's as convenient as a room away or across the street,
Yeah, I mean, we're really, blessed to have this situation with Michelle, because it is so easy. There's no excuse. It's literally opening a door and saying, "Hey, Michelle, do you have a second?" You're right. There's times where, I think we can work with what they're dealing with. We know their history, at least from what they've told us. We can still get a good workout in. We can move, and we're staying out of pain. But you're right. It gets to a point sometimes where, hey, we see a lot of zeros, and I think my hands are going to be tied. It's very little that I think I can do that is going to get you. You came in to lose weight, lose some body fat, and I'm not going to be able to do anything to help with that goal. At least have somebody look at it. And if for those that maybe don't have that relationship, I couldn't stress this enough. It will make your life so much easier to have somebody on the same team, same language, all with the same goal, which is to help the client. I know sometimes from a fitness side, the idea is I don't want to send them to PT, or I don't want to lose this client because they're going to say they can't work out anymore. And that is I honestly, I don't know if that's ever happened, where it's always been me and Michelle have a conversation after she meets with them, and she'll say, hey, I'm going to be meeting with them. Here's what we're going to work on. Here's what I'd like you to stay away from right now while we work on these things. But they're good with this. They're good with these things. And maybe even better, I'm the homework now, right? For Michelle, where she'll say, hey, this is going to support what we're doing. Can we do some tall kneeling turns? Can we do some carries? Can we do some rolling patterns? Whatever it is, just make that part of your warm-up routine. And I think it's going to get him back much faster. And now we're where I want to be, where I'm going to see them now 3 days a week, and we're getting them closer and closer to their goal. And so many clients that we have worked with that have just had a good experience with this process. And even if they were hesitant in the beginning, where they're like, no, I'm good. I dealt with this pain for 5 years and I know what to do. It just starts with a conversation, and then Michelle can, sell what she's going to do to them and explain how, as soon as we can get you past this, again, now there's so much more that we can do, and it's going to result in you're going to get your results so much faster when I'm not as limited with my program design selection. Now, when you unlock that box, I throw more at you, and we get there faster.
Now, Mike, you just touched on some stuff that I'm going to try to, I think we ought to talk about this a little bit more, because this is a huge, huge problem. Anytime that I get the time to go out and speak to other people, they're always, most all the clients walking into a gym are going in because they're hurt now. I mean, and when I say hurt, their backs hurt, their knees hurt, they're suffering from ailments that they're trying to go in and exercise away. And I think we even have the data that says a lot of times that's not going to happen. And a lot of times exercise may even cause some of those problems. So they're going into the situation already, a lot of problems. And I think you and Gray and I just touched on it, have kind of what we would look at as the gold standard. It's like the optimal situation where you're seeing them and you've got an easy, like you said, as simple as opening a door. Hey, Michelle, can you take a look? And she will. So two questions I've got for you, or two things we can discuss right here is, when did you get to the point where you realized, especially as a young personal trainer, fitness strength coach, that you need that? Because that's the pushback I get when I tell someone, hey, you need to create that relationship with a medical person for no other reason, just to bounce ideas off of. And the response a lot of times I get is, well, I don't feel comfortable about talking to someone, or, I don't want to refer my client. Then my client doesn't think I've got the, confidence. So there's a lot of myriad of reasons of why someone doesn't refer. And I get a lot of that. But kind of walk us through what was your breakthrough of saying, it's okay.
It's a
okay
competitive advantage for your career. It's not a liability at all.
Yeah. And I get it. I understand what people are saying and their concerns, where you want to be like the guy that, or the girl that can handle it all, right? Where I know the answer, and I think it takes a lot to admit sometimes that you don't, and there's nothing wrong with that. And the more of a team you have, I think the better overall your business is from a lot of standpoints. So a lot of it honestly came from myself first, where I was going down that path of, I have a lot of injuries that just don't go away. And the first time I met Michelle, actually, she came in and we talked, and I learned a little bit about what she did. And I'm like, of course, when you hear somebody can fix some pain, I'm like, can you look at this? Can you look at this? And luckily she did. And I'm like, I feel a lot better. And I followed through and I did what she said. And then I would go into my bad habits again. I'd go right back to where I was. I'm like, you fixed me. Now I go train the way I always train. And now I'm hurt again. And really seeing that the stuff I'm doing is not helping me get to my goal. It's just the stuff that I think you're supposed to do because I'm supposed to get stronger and lift these weights. But I started to realize, with how I move, certain movements, every time I go down that path, I have an issue. And then I had to evaluate, do I really need these movements? Is there something similar I can do and get the benefit and not have to go down this path? And then looking at my clients and really saying, how many of my clients are hurt and not getting better? And that was a really hard thing to admit, where, yeah, maybe they're not getting worse, but I had these clients that are just dealing with this thing. and how hard my job is to write a program for this person when there's just stuff I can't do, and nothing I was doing was getting them better. But again, being able to send them to somebody and all of a sudden they can lift their arm overhead, their head, and it doesn't hurt. And now we've unlocked a few things. Now my program database is open again, and it's more fun to write these programs. They're having more fun because it's not like the same one exercise I feel comfortable with anymore. Now we can explore a little bit more. But I had to get to that point, and really the realization that what I was doing could have been so much better if I just had somebody, and whether it was at my facility or not, I was ready to make that commitment.
Well, what I am excited about is, me, you, Lee, Michelle, we've had to learn it the hard way, because I think we came from a situation where healthcare was in a silo and fitness and strength conditioning were in a silo. And there were a lot of people that weren't jacked up enough to be in my clinic, but they also weren't ready to hit your floor and do what most were doing. And I think that starts because if you start Googling around functional movement on the internet, you'll see us come up, but you'll also see about 3,000 people saying, and the functional movements we all should do are pull, press, hinge, squat, lunge. They're restating it a different way. They're either saying cover all these movements in your workout, or can you do all these movements? We're saying, can you even do these movements? And if you can't, would you focus on the ones you can't do and maybe free up some time of rehearsing stuff you can do? But I still think there's a large group of people out there that think if you just have a station for each of those moves that I mentioned, all will be good. We can work you out of your dysfunction. And we can't really do that. Right now, the Symmio app that we can give people, if you got a lot of red flags, I would probably say, let's start this journey with a quick musculoskeletal exam whenever we can fit it in. In the meantime, let's do as many screens, because 3 weeks in to doing stuff with you, if you readdressed that Symmio app, you could show your client, we just took 3 risk factors off the table. We just moved you from a red light to a yellow light. Whereas at the same 3-week mark with someone else, if they still got a bunch of red flags, say, hey, something else is going on. And I want to get another set of eyes on this. And so that same revelation that I think we all got through a lot of reps in the hard way, we will be able to provide that dashboard with a therapist. I got to discharge them. They're not coming back. Their insurance is over, and they still got some risk factors and red lights. But I'm glad I know Mike's across town. So speaking to clinicians out there, if somebody hasn't recruited you to be in the functional model, you got to recruit somebody, because I need to know where my patients are going, because healthcare is not covering everything they need through movement yet. So the ones that are incentivized to stay on an app and maybe have a few sessions with you, or just jump in with both feet based on my recommendation. So it goes both ways. But I think having that app is a scoreboard that would have got any of us here a little bit quicker, because you assume, well, if they're working out with me, their risk factors are just melting away. Not always. Or, hey, I can't believe how much difference we made just by programming you like this. You wouldn't have got this if you'd been in physical therapy full time, same thing. So I think having that, peeling away risk factors, is really what's happening when people start moving better and realizing that. Now, their test scores go higher, but it doesn't matter what your test score is. You're either still a risk factor or you're not. And that language has become pretty clean.
That's the flip side of it, right, Mike, is we know through research that when a patient gets discharged from physical therapy, that doesn't mean they're ready to go play a sport. And it certainly doesn't mean they're ready to go, not even ready to go back to their job. A lot of times, if their job is pretty, has a lot of, activity in it. So, I mean, that is the part of the process that could benefit a strength conditioning or fitness professional. That communication you have with Michelle goes the other way too. She's got a patient that she's getting ready to discharge, because whether the insurance is done paying for it, or whether she's kind of met her level of expertise. Like right now, okay, they came in with knee pain, they're out of knee pain, but I've got I'm not really it's not my job to strength train them now. Let me call up Mike. So it does go both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a business owner, right? So I'm always looking for lead generations, and it's kind of a no-brainer where, you give what you get. When we send people anywhere, right? When we refer out to other businesses, they're way more likely to at least talk to us, right? Like, what do you have going on there? And then now we can explain how we work. And I think that's kind of where it starts, is just having conversations with people, with a medical professional or with a fitness professional, depending on what side of it you are, because it just helps to have the whole situation. Then you can really get good at what you do and not feel like, where I think kind of the industry was going, you needed to be everything to everyone. And that's really hard. Then you're kind of okay at some stuff, but to just get really good at what you do, whether it's fitness or medical side, and be able to work back and forth. And to, again, how much information I get from somebody like Michelle, where I have this person, they're not in pain. But now we have a better intake, where now I know the right questions to ask that person based on whatever information Michelle or whoever is able to give me. And now I have a great starting point for that person. And I know here's where we should be pointing the finger and really making sure we're working on this as we develop the other, skills that we're going to be working on with you.
Well, that's what we learned when we started transitioning from just sort of trying to clean up the functional movement world and realizing that, oh my gosh, the majority of indicators of your wellness can actually accurately be quantified as risk factors or predictors in movement. Pain with movement, BMI. There's a few other things that are wellness predictors like grip strength. But when we look at what we learned from the Y balance test and the FMS, is don't have a lot of dysfunctional movements, right? Don't have a lot of asymmetries, don't have pain with movement, and definitely don't have bad balance. Just don't. And if you do, then whether you already have a medical problem or you're in an active lifestyle, it's sort of coming. When we went to wellness, I think that Lee and I even realized, well, we need a sleep survey. We need some type of wearable information. But if all we do is screen each of the major domains in your lifestyle and behaviors, we're good enough. Because as you said, I can't be a nutrition expert and a full-time physical therapist, but I can have a checklist for inflammatory foods. I can understand how BMI is going to affect your musculoskeletal situation, and I can understand how loss of sleep is going to do that. So I think if everybody, from behavioral health to nutrition to sleep consultation to exercise, if we would all screen everything, we'd find out that, I can't sleep this weight off of you, but I also can't work this weight off of you without minimums in sleep. It's both ways. But that's what happens when we specialize. Our particular domain becomes the most important. And I think any of us at intake, whether it be healthcare or fitness, if we're not screening the good enoughs, then we've either got to refer you or just give you the advice that most experts agree on. And the 80-20 play is, if I keep asking you about it, it'll just get better. That's the Hawthorne effect. Anything studied, the subjects in the study will start getting better just because they're being watched. That's why it works.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Like, you're right. Yeah, we may not be an expert in everything, but there's some definite good screening that we can all do and understand to help people on the right track. And if going back to programming, right? So if I'm going to do an FMS, and maybe I catch some ones, some twos, some three, a little bit of everything in there. Maybe they do have a little bit of pain that they told me about. Like you said, I don't know that I need to refer out immediately, right? Are these things, well, let me avoid the things that are causing pain. Let me work on where I think you need work. And then we'll train anything that we feel comfortable training. And then we rescreen and your back's feeling better. And we're making those improvements after maybe a few weeks, or it's not. And that's a conversation. Well, now I've kind of done the things I think are going to help you. And now I bring in that other expert on whatever it is. So same thing. If it was sleep, nutrition, I will give you the nutrition. I think I know a decent amount of nutrition to at least get you started and get you on the right path. but I know that a nutritionist or a dietitian, if there's certain situations, they're going to be the expert that can give us way more information and help. So if the things I'm recommending aren't helping in the program, then it's time to get some help. But oftentimes when you get those basics down, what you find is they do get better, and understanding that.
Yeah, and having been on the front lines of movement screening all along, if 100% or at least 80% of your movement problem is functional, not structural, is behavioral, not physiological, anatomical, right? Mike Deibler's not really going to help me with my meniscus. It's just going to continue getting worse every time I flare it up. But if I have bad knee mechanics, I got a feeling 3 weeks with you is going to actually be a more sustainable way to keep my knees healthy than going through conventional rehabilitation, because all they're going to have time to do is check you for inflammation, brace you if needed. Everybody's got arthritis. That's what the extra, Mike's got a little degenerative changes in the knee. So we're going to operate on that. No, your patellar tracking's all off, your hip is weak, and you got a tight ankle. So the point of doing that functional movement screen is seeing if a few of those movements sort of throw you off balance or provoke a little pain. But once again, if every time I loaded my left ankle and you movement screened me, it was painful and it didn't bend, you'd be like, that's a left ankle. We need to get that checked out. But if I only felt that ankle at the bottom of my deep squat and no other time, that's probably got more to do with the way I'm squatting, because you already bent that ankle when I did my lunge and when I had to step over a hurdle. So I honestly think functional problems treated or trained the way you're doing them get better under your eyes than you do most PTs, because we are right now, the medical model only recognizes and pays for the fact that they think we're working on structure. I ain't changing arthritis in 3 weeks. I'm changing the irritability to that joint by making you not exploit it, but I'm not changing your arthritis. So, that the fact that you're gathering functional information without a whole lot of pings that there's bad structure here, there's just some bad behaviors, puts it right in that wheelhouse. And until insurance is paying for people to reduce those risk factors, I think that the consumer has to recognize that, but they're not going to recognize the numbers. They're simply going to recognize, oh, I can touch my toes. It doesn't hurt going down steps anymore. Done. You're the guy. You just did that, right? So,
absolutely, yeah.
And Mike, one other thing I was going to bring up during this conversation, I'm pretty sure we talked about this because the last time you were on, I think it may have been even during the pandemic. And I know virtual training and online training was obviously necessary then. Now, it wasn't necessarily needed. It was like all we could do. But I'm sure, you tell me, but I'm sure you're still training some people online or virtually, specifically as far as program design. Obviously, there's differences, right? The obvious, you're not with them. But how do you approach that? I mean, how much do you have to deviate from your fundamental philosophy? Or do you not? Do you just have ways around it? Kind of walk us through that.
Yeah, so I still am. I still work quite a few online clients. And I do it, I guess, 2 different ways. So depending on how I am working with somebody virtually, it'll depend. So some will be kind of like we're doing right now. We'll do a Zoom or some type of video base where it's still basically a typical training session. I'm just not in the room with you. So obviously I can't see everything, but we can set the camera up and get a good idea. So in those circumstances, it's pretty similar to how we typically do it. The main thing is it's much harder to make sure you're in the right position. So by default, I tend to limit my exercise selection to things I know you're going to do pretty well. And that's me just maybe trying to manage risks as much as possible, because it's just much harder to correct you and to get you in a better position, even if I know you can do it and you're just, not performing it very well. So I try to just limit my exercise selection in those regards. But other than that, I'm still doing the same thing. We're still trying to screen what we can screen, get whatever information we can get. I'm still talking face to face still. So I'm still trying to look at any lifestyle information and having those conversations. When it's more of hey, we may touch base once a month, and then you're kind of on your own and I write the program. Then I actually am relying a little bit more on some data, like we talked about initially. That's when I do questionnaires most often. Just I want to see what's your perception right now, soreness, anxiety, stress, sleep, any trackables you are wearing. I do like the HRV and heart rate, so I'm trying to look at those numbers. And again, just looking for trends. Right, one bad day, I'm not going to go crazy and change everything. But I'm seeing a trend of, hey, some of these numbers are going the wrong way, right? We're looking for the opposite adaptation with our programming. So I am going to rely a little bit heavier on those types of information, and then provide feedback as we're going. So I'll plan for a month, for example, but I know realistically it's not going to go as written, because 2 weeks in, you're like, hey, something's going on. Stress at work, it's crazy, I'm traveling all week, or hey, my knee is acting a little funny, what should I do? And same lines, it's going to be, all right, we're going to have to figure out what exercises are causing those problems. I gotta get rid of those, and I am not afraid to refer out, even if they live in another state. I will find somebody in that area that I can at least have a conversation with. If it's something just like I'm with you in the studio, if we're a couple weeks in and everything I recommended is not seeing any improvements, there's nothing wrong with referring out. Even if I haven't met that person face to face, I can still have conversations and make sure we're on the same page, and we can take care of that person that way as well.
So how often does that occur, honestly?
Not that often. Yeah. I mean,
right.
we
but
can.
But what's important for everybody to admit, you're perfectly okay with that happening. And you're perfectly okay with that outlier needing an extra layer. It doesn't often happen because you're hypervigilant. And I think you plant you already know if you need to screen them or not, but you're probably not going to be surprised with what the screen says. You're just doing that to double check yourself. But we're always layering in one movement that is almost a barometer. And if that thing's getting better, if your Turkish get-ups are getting better, if your tall kneel and turns are getting better, we're heading in the right direction. But I think it's both a demonstration of your intelligence or humility that if this is not going as planned or programmed, I am perfectly willing to audit myself as much as I'm going to audit them. You don't often have to, but that keeps you out of confirmation bias. So just the fact that you'd easily be willing to do that, I think, is the fresh perspective that you got to keep.
And Mike, I'm going to switch gears here. Since you're the business guy, at the end of the day, you got to make some money. Virtually training someone or online training can get out of hand, I would imagine. So how I'm assuming you set expectations for these individuals you're training virtually online. You don't want to get a text on a Saturday afternoon and them expect you to get back to them, right? So how often are you reviewing some of the data you mentioned? That's what kind of made me think about, all right, if you're looking at their HRV data, I'm assuming maybe you are, but answer the question. Are you looking at that stuff every day, or are you getting them to track it? And then if you're doing a monthly session with them, are you just taking the first, a half hour or whatever before you get online and reviewing all of their data? Walk us through that process. And then how do you set the expectations?
Sure. Let me see the expectations first. So like you said, absolutely, you can get not even virtual. Like if I'm handing out my cell phone to all my clients, some may have it, but you might get a lot of text messages. So I think in any, professional relationship, just setting those boundaries up front where, hey, emails. So for virtual, I'll typically say, hey, every Monday, you're going to email me with either questions that came up over the previous week or progress on, hey, everything's good. We're getting stronger, getting faster, whatever. Or maybe sometimes it's, hey, no, everything's good. No news to report. And all right. But either way, I want that email every Monday just to touch base. And that's pretty much it, unless there's some rare situation where I would like to follow up, maybe the next day or something like that. But I try and set weekly email check-ins. Monthly, we might sit down for 15 minutes on a call and go over anything that's just too hard to email. So that's pretty much how I'll set up those expectations. Just write me a bullet point email one day a week, and then we'll hop on a call once a month. And I 95% of the time, that's all we need to do. And then the tracking aspect. So what I do is I have 2 days a week where I'll use an app that I'll deliver programs and things like that, but it also has that questionnaire in it, and it can also they report their HRV. So twice a week, I'm just logging in, and it's real quick. I just scroll through the numbers and just make sure I don't see anything significantly out of place there. And if I do, then I might be checking in a little bit more, just to make sure that they're trending the right direction again. So I do think once a week is maybe okay, but I just like to have that 2 days a week where I can really see, just so I didn't miss something, where all of a sudden numbers are already tanked. Now I'm being reactive and I have to, which happens, it definitely happens. But at least I'll catch it and then make sure we back up. I got to reach out to them now and say, what's going on here? And usually there's a pretty easy explanation for what's going on. And then we just modify as needed, right? That course correction. And we drifted a little too far. We're just going to get back on track and then just keep monitoring it from there. So a couple times a week is usually pretty good.
All right. Well, being over there in California, what kind of trends are you seeing that may not make it to Virginia for another 8 or 10 years? I mean, in your own personal development, coaching journey and with your clients, you adding anything new? I mean, it was, 10 or 15 years ago, you didn't have any kettlebells in the space. And now a kettlebell is a fixture in a functionally oriented gym right now. Whether they know how to use it or not, they know they need some. Battling rope, stuff like that. Do you see anything new that's becoming more trendy, or is it just different ways to make the same soup with the same ingredients or whatever?
I think you're seeing a lot of different recipes for the same thing, or different ingredients for the same recipe. I'm trying to think real quick if we will get some weird stuff sometimes, but I haven't seen anything out of the ordinary. It's a lot of the same stuff, just little different twists here and there.
I'm actually going outside of our profession to see stuff, right? I think the last wave of stuff we saw was we were doing a bunch of newer stuff with Indian clubs. We were seeing some sandbags, but I've been seeing how many people have cropped up online recently and have huge numbers just selling these exercise packages, these monthly exercise packages, looking at the way they're coming at it, because when Peloton started, it was 100% motivation and accountability. I don't think anybody's really doing anything new and innovative and on the bike or on the treadmill. Mm-hmm. They're just giving you something to look at and yelling at you just so you can stay engaged. But I'm looking at a lot of the people online right now that are pretty much coaching and training people. They don't have a lot of, I would say, credentials or background, but it's not like they're doing anything bad. Our knee-jerk reaction is they're taking business away from the professions, that mm-hmm. have trained to do this. But hell, we're reinventing ourselves on the fly because a lot of our training doesn't even apply to the populations we work with anymore. So I look at a lot of the people doing body weight or gymnastic stuff. A few years mm-hmm. ago, gymnastic strength. I was watching a lot of the different breathing things that the Wim Hof followers were doing. The knee over toes guy that was a college basketball mm-hmm. player that had a bad experience with his strength coach. And, I look at those people because they're getting to an exercise maybe different than we did with a biomechanical or kinesiological or functional approach, but they're maybe covering some areas that we didn't. And this guy, he was once told knees don't go over toes, but he was a basketball player and he knew that in Olympic weightlifting they did, and, mm-hmm. in high jumping they did, knees go over toes. But that became a fitness mantra that won this guy big. He is right. Knees do go over toes. That was a rule a lot of group exercise instructors used teaching step aerobics, because most of the people taking step aerobics when Reebok steps were invented weren't appropriate for step aerobics. So if we don't put your mm-hmm. knee over your toes or don't make the step too high, then it works. But I start looking at a lot of the aggressive flexibility, dorsiflexion stuff. And it's sort of, the ones that stick maybe they're not hurting as many people as we think. So I'm constantly looking out there to people that, even though they don't come through our camp, if we went back in a month later and movement screened these people, are they more functional than they were? Are they having an engaging experience? And did somebody debunk their fitness journey? So I'm not saying they're all right. I'm saying that I look outside of our house and inside of our house equally to see if our house can get better, you know?
Yeah, now that you say that, and I don't know if this is just out here on the West Coast, it's probably popular enough to be everywhere now, but the recovery tools, I feel like, are just popping up everywhere, and or methods with ice baths, saunas, Normatec compression, everything, and it's overwhelming. I think, like you said, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is more things. And I think it's something to consider, if we're talking about programming. I do like talking a little bit about recovery, and, nothing's ever going to beat sleep and nutrition. And if they're okay, then maybe you can look at some of these other things. But it seems like everybody now is putting a sauna in their backyard. They got the ice bath. It's a lot.
No, Mike,
So
that's a
we'll
great
see.
observation, because I think you're totally right.
Yeah.
I mean, that is I would say the big trend is people are focused on recovery, and at the end of the day, you're right. Sleep, nutrition, hydration, the basics. Do the basics. But everybody wants that little extra thing that they think is going to be, the secret sauce that they need to get one step ahead. And quite honestly, a lot of those things probably will give them a little bit of a, push in the right direction. But,
at least it's making them think about recovery, which I think is the first step, right? It's, hey, I'd rather you pay more money to help you sleep, but at least you're thinking about it. Now the next step is, are you training hard enough to warrant all of these fancy?
That's a better observation.
They need recovery from a toxic lifestyle, probably more than anything. I've had a sauna in my house for 20 years. I love doing a cold plunge, but I just do it when the lake is cold. Otherwise, it's just easy to turn the shower to cold the last, minute and a half you're in there and get that minimum effective dose. Interestingly enough, when we just flew to the West Coast, Doc Chang grabbed me from the airport. He goes, "I got a new hyperbaric oxygen chamber I want you to try." And oh man, on a day you fly. But it made me sort of think, are we all using the oxygen that's available that poorly? Do we all need that reset? So I think that a lot of these recovery things, if you can't even get through life without 3 saunas and foam rolling before every workout, I swear I think you must be eating poison, because your body should recalibrate a little bit quicker than that. There's nothing wrong with jump starting it. And I had a lot of seasonal allergies, and in the wintertime, I love doing sauna, and the more I do it, the better my immune system stays. But I agree that sometimes a better sleep, better hydration choices, cut the sugar intake in half, don't eat late, watch the stimulants. Those all do it too.
I would say if you're relying on a lot of those things, something else is going on. You've got a problem somewhere else, whether it's your workout, whether it's your lifestyle. If you think you need to go to a sauna every day and use I want to use a Theragun or vibration, hyper, whatever it is, every day on something, then something else is happening that you need to be addressing.
Yeah. But when you're particularly stressed and beat up from something, then I think they will reset you and kind of push you over, whether it's physiologically or psychologically, and they all have their place. It's just learning that process.
Yep. Right. Well, it is nice when they make enough of a reset for you to appreciate and feel good. I honestly think getting somebody to even temporarily feel good is sort of the marker. Okay, now let's shoot for that a couple of different ways, and reversing the way I breathe in kettlebell swings when I'm just doing it to sort of prime up or charge, not really trying to change my conditioning level, just maybe change my state of readiness or get amped up for the day. That was everything for me, just reversing my breathing and, doing an inhale with a lighter kettlebell, dragging it out a little bit longer. Just a great way to sort of get the minimum Wim Hof effect without getting dizzy while I'm holding the kettlebell. So,
Well, Mike, this has been a great conversation. Really appreciate everything you brought to this, and thanks for being part of our family. Thanks for embracing what we did and putting your own spin on it. And congratulations to the success you're having out there. Appreciate you being a part of FMS and being part of this podcast.
Thanks, man.
Oh, I love it, and so grateful to be a part of it, and always happy to chat with you guys.
If you want to learn more about today's podcast or dive deeper into functional movement systems information, check out some of the resources and offers we're providing in the description. That will do it for this episode of the Movement Podcast.
Thanks for listening, and if you liked what you heard, please take a minute and subscribe and review.
If you want to learn more about our system and take the next step in your own movement journey,
visit us at movementpod.com.
Until next time, be sure to first move well,
then move often.